From white sand scrubs, to pine flatwoods, to even ephemeral wetlands, Johnathan Dickinson Park is one of the most biodiverse areas in southern Florida. The trail we're at right now is a perfect junction of all these different weird habitats all in one, so you could just imagine all the beautiful animals that could be living in here. While I'm here mostly for the purpose of looking for grasshoppers, I will not be surprised at all if I get completely sidetracked by all the other amazing animals that are living in this beautiful habitat. So let's see what all we could find.
This little guy right here is a cattail toothpick grasshopper. It's a species that I normally see a lot closer to water. So it's pretty interesting that I've seen a couple of these guys out here in the scrub, and this full-grown adult female right here, just in a pretty dry habitat, so pretty cool.
The most common species of grasshopper in the ephemeral wetlands, which were actually dried up right now, was the elegant grasshopper, or Dichromorpha elegans. Now this is a species that I've never known to be especially common, and I had only ever seen one before in my entire life, so it was amazing seeing so many of them. While extremely variable in color pattern, this is an easy species to identify based on that kind of downward curved stripe on the side of the thorax. When I saw this little guy hop in front of me, I thought it was a grasshopper at first, but this is actually a southern cricket frog. This is the closest I've ever been to this species, and the first time I've gotten like really good footage of one. This is an interesting looking individual because it has a bright green kind of X pattern on the back. While this nymph is unfortunately too young to identify to a species, it is always really cool to find Stagmo mantis. Now based on range and habitat alone, this is either the Carolina or the large Florida mantis. But Stagmo mantis, which is the genus that this is definitely in, are the most common mantises I come across here in these kind of scrubby areas. This strange looking beetle is actually my lifer, Florida blister beetle. Now these guys are called blister beetles because they actually secrete a really toxic poison out of them that if you just touch it, it can make blisters form on your skin. This is a very useful anti-predator defense mechanism. Blister beetles in general could be identified by their distinctive head shape as well as unusually swollen abdomen. This right here is one of the largest robber flies in all of Florida, and probably the largest, at least the longest, robber fly I've ever caught. This is Diogmedes crudelis, which unfortunately does not have a common name, though members of the genus Diogmedes in general are referred to as hanging thieves, because they use those very unusually long legs to hang off of branches while they eat their food, and that helps them keep their food, which are often very defensive insects like bees and wasps, as far away from their face as possible. As we moved away from the ephemeral wetlands and more towards the drier parts of this scrubby area, the species we saw started to change, like this absolutely gorgeous zebra swallowtail, which has unmistakable patterning and is just one of the most easily recognizable butterflies in all of Florida. This is the only species of kite swallowtail that can be found in eastern North America. Right here is my lifer scabrous tiger beetle, which is definitely the tiniest tiger beetle I've ever seen. These guys are mostly black, except they can be identified by the big white blotches at the end of the elytra, or those wing cases, as well as a white stripe running down each side of the thorax. Really cute but predatory beetle. This right here is my lifer, Camponotus socius, or the sandhill carpenter ant. This is a massive ant, one of the largest species of ants here in Florida, and this worker seemed to be carrying another worker, probably a dead one, in its mouth. This tiny fly is an amazing species called Stichopogon abdominalis. This is actually a range extension for this species, and I wish I got more footage. At first glance at this range map, it might not look like that much of an extension, but this is not only just barely the farthest south record, but it is also, more significantly, the first record on the Atlantic coastal ridge, which is the cluster of sand scrub habitat running up the Atlantic coast of Florida. As you can see, all other records come from more central ridges or western Florida ridges. Arguably the coolest find of this whole day, though, was this common eastern velvet ant, or Dacimutilla occidentalis. Now, velvet ant ID is normally just an absolute nightmare with lots of species looking almost identical. However, this species is very easily identified due to that almost unmistakable color pattern. Besides just color pattern, though, this species is abnormally large for a velvet ant. I had never seen this species before then, so I had no clue how large it was, but this is actually maybe 3 times the size of the previous largest velvet I had ever seen. And you could really see that size compared to my shoe. We actually mistook this as a beetle before walking closer to it. Even though this is running very fast, it's also considerably slower than any velvet ant I had ever seen before. Just a really distinctive species, and it was amazing finally finding one